I'm Woods Houghton with the Eddy County Extension Office, and the Extension Office is part of three groups. We're part of USDA, we're also part of the state with New Mexico State University, and we are part of the county in a service given to you by county government. So today we're going to be talking about Goldenrod, which is a noxious poisonous plant that occurs in not only Eddy County but statewide, and a program that we've been involved with in doing surveys and assisting in trying to understand this plant and how to keep having cattle and sheep and horses killed by it. With that, let's go out and get some samples for NMDA. And I found an area down here that we've been sampling for a number of years that have a history with toxicity in cattle, and so that's where we're going to go down here by Loving, New Mexico, and get a sample. Thank you. On our way out to Loving, and we're going to get Goldenrod. Now, a number of years ago I had a rancher down here call me, and he had 6 dead horses and a lot of horses that were sick, and he wanted to know why. And when I got down there, you could see the muscles trembling on the side of the horse's withers and neck, and he said one horse died, and so I was riding my daughter's horse, and it died out from under him while he was riding the horse. Just dropped dead. And we determined it was Goldenrod because of the trembling and the symptoms in the animal. And out of those 26 horses, 18 survived, and we were able to save them. So this can be a real serious problem if animals get into it. I've had a number of cattle necropsies that were goldenrod poisoning. It grows ubiquitous around the county, and it can be quite serious at certain years and certain times. And probably in this county alone, goldenrod poisoning accounts for about $40,000 worth of damage and livestock losses a year, and probably ranchers spend about $8,000 to $10,000 a year working on control measures. Well, as we're going down through Loving right now, we just drove past Carlsbad Irrigation District's main office, but in Otis, a lot of these small towns were major communities a number of years ago when everything was done by horseback, and you couldn't go very far to go get parts or go get items you needed. And so all these little towns showed up in about a day's ride from each other. So you have Loving and Otis and Malaga, and these were all settled by people coming in because of the Carlsbad Irrigation District. And the idea of rain on call, that you could get irrigation water for your crops when you needed it on demand. And it's evolved over time. At one time, this was we had 14 cotton gins. We're getting ready to go past the old Derrick Road cotton gin, and that's closed down. But one time we had 14 cotton gins. When I came here in 1990, we had 4 cotton gins, and now we're down to 2. And we've gone from about 25,000 acres of cotton down to about 8,000 acres at this time. And we've gone more into alfalfa and pecans, strictly as an economic source of monetary value, and that changes also with markets as they evolve, and availability of water. just came off the road from Loving, and in fact, where we're at, this used to be an irrigated farm before the state bought the water rights off of it, and so now it's being used as a pasture. And whenever you abandon farmland, you get evasion of weed species. That's one of the first plant successionary stages is weeds, and then after the weeds go, you get perennial grasses and perennial plants, and it grows up, and you see that all over the county where they've dried up farmland, some as long as the land bank days back in the 1920s. But so what we got here is the goldenrod has invaded from this drain ditch and has invaded out into the pasture where they're trying to raise some cattle and goats, and they've had some toxic problems with cattle and goats. So with that, let's get out of the truck and kind of look around and see where we're at, because I know that the producer here was going to try to control some of this, and hopefully he didn't kill it all. I always carry my hoe. You never know when you're going to have to get rid of some weeds. And let's take a look and see what we got here. We got quite a bit of goldenrod spread out, but it's all small. You see all these stems sticking up here, and then this green right down here, that's goldenrod. The stems is what was last year's growth, and the green is this year's growth, and that's what we want to get samples of. And you know, fortunately, it's not too big, so we want to get a complete sample, which includes part of the root. And so we got to get 10 of these. So we just randomly pick out plants. A little bit different area. So what did I stack this? That's not goldenrod, that's a mesquite, but I don't want it to get started in this field anyway. Alright, right now you can see this is the last year's stuff sticking up. This is this year's. It's kind of a sticky plant. But where we usually have toxicity in cattle is when this is sticking up out of snow, or it's the only green thing sticking up, they'll come along here and eat it. And if you look on some of these plants, like that one right there, you can see the top of these will be broken off where the cows have eaten on it and probably had some toxic symptoms on it. As you see all the dead stuff sticking up out of this field, you can see that's all goldenrod. And there's a lot of it out there. When you first drive by, all you see is the grass, and you don't see the goldenrod sticking up there. But when you stop and really start looking at it, there's a lot of goldenrod in this field. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the things about being a county extension agent. Cell phones have made it really a lot better. We used to have truck phones, but we get calls all the time. That call there was about an Africanized bee stinging incident just a couple miles from where we're at right now. And 2 boys were seriously injured, and Otis Fire Department is responding, and they were looking for some beekeepers that could come in there and help them distribute those bees. We don't have any beekeepers that will do that anymore, so we're kind of stuck doing it on our own. As you look, you can see the width of this root here. This is a perennial plant. It will grow for 15 to 20 years. And this one's pretty small because it's been grazed off. And the next place we're going to stop has not been grazed, and you'll see a lot more robust and bigger plants that we're going to sample. And that's why we have 2 sampling locations. But for some reason, the producer here raises goats, and goats will eat a little bit of it, but not a lot of it, not enough to get sick. And they do seem to have a tolerance to it much higher than other animals. But obviously, you would not want to put a horse out here, because just a little bit of a horse will make that horse sick. Right now there's 2 legal control methods. Toradon 22K as a broadcast spray, which is what I would recommend on this field, or you can use spike tebutyron as a pellet, and we use that more in rangeland conditions where we're not sure when we're going to get moisture on it or other problems with it. You can see the cotton gin in the far distance, and just a few years ago this was a productive alfalfa field that was producing 6 to 8 tons of alfalfa per acre. But without water, it's just got to grow whatever will grow here natively, which right now is a lot of goldenrod and some brome grass and some Johnson grass and some mesquite. And so the rancher or farmer is because he has no water rights on this property, belongs to the state now to pay back Texas. The revenue per acre on this has gone from somewhere around a couple $1,000s an acre to less than 20 an acre per year. Now we got our samples, and we're going to put them in a garbage sack to keep them separated from our second group, and then we'll get them ready to ship off to Logan, Utah, where they'll be analyzed. At this time of the year, it's not that big of a deal, but in the fall, because I do these every month, I want to make sure I get them covered up real well so that I don't get spread seeds as I drive along the highway. So I always make sure I get them. So I got big garbage sacks. Another one of our noxious invasive weeds is salt cedar, which is non-native. And actually, I'm going to get you to turn around and look at the plants behind the pickup there. It's starting to invade into this field as well, which is going to be a problem. But when this was an alfalfa field, we purposely did not control the salt cedar on this whole flat to the north of us here because this field has a tendency to be a little bit subby, and the salt cedar evaporated enough moisture out that it kept these fields productive. But now that they're out of production, not being irrigated, the salt cedar is invading what is now to be productive ground for grazing. And so, when we started the salt cedar control program or management program, we didn't just go in and just indiscriminately kill every salt cedar we saw. We tried to select the ones that would give us the most yield of water and least environmental damage. But now we're going to have to come back and get this because we sold the water rights off, and we might as well let this go back to what it was, which was a swamp. We got our sample, so now we're off to south of Loving to where we'll get some bigger and more robust. You'll see a lot larger plants, and because these aren't grazed or they're on the side of the highway. Okay, yeah. That's another advantage of being a county agent. You know about half the combinations to most of the ranches in the state. But that gate's for oil traffic, but because every once in a while goats can get over cattle guards pretty easily, so we keep it shut. So one of the things we always tell people, if you find a gate shut, leave a gate shut. And I happen to know that there was a guy in there before we went in there and left that gate open, so that when we drove in, we didn't have to open it up. But when you find a gate open on a ranch, always leave it the way you find it. If it's open, leave it open. That's because they got it open so cattle can get to water. Or if they got it closed, keep it closed. That's to keep cattle off of certain areas. Areas of grazing as goats. This is the old cotton mill, which is a combination cotton gin, and they used to squeeze the seed and get cotton oil out of it, and used to sell the cottonseed meal to ranchers for feed. It's been shut down for a number of years now, but you know, the infrastructure is still there, and people are utilizing those barns and sheds for other purposes. Loving's had a couple of names before. It's named Loving now after the Loving Goodnight Trail, which was just to the east of us here, and that was one of the first cattle drives, and it was actually to move cattle from Texas to Bosque Redondo, which is now Fort Sumner, to feed the Indians that were in the concentration camp there. They had 10,000 Indians, Navajo and Apache, who were put into internment there, and they thought they could teach them to farm, and they had problems with crop failures and drought and all the problems we still deal with today, except for they didn't have nearly enough acres for for the number of people they were trying to feed. And as a consequence, 3,000 Native Americans were starved to death. And one of the sad stories of our history. And we just, you know, passed one abandoned field that was, well, I'd say abandoned, not abandoned, but the water rights were sold to deliver the water to Texas, and as part of the Texas Compact delivery method. And most people don't realize that how much economic income agriculture is to the county. Overall, it's about 400 million. And of course, Eddy County got a double whammy on that, because not only did we sell off a percentage of Carlsbad Irrigation District, but we also had to sell off part of Pecos Valley Artesian Excurrency District, and some of that land was in the county as well. And because the closer to the state line, the better, as far as the state engineer was concerned. And so the county took a little bit of a larger percentage than some of the other counties upriver. One thing we do have an abundance in this county is turkey vultures. We're pulling off the road here, and this is another site we have that I've picked as an ungrazed site, or where there's very little impact. And being on the side of the road like this, we don't have to worry about different things getting it. And you can see the plants are a lot bigger, a lot more robust, and our tips are just getting ready to flower. And that's one of my little pet peeves is when I go up north to Santa Fe and Taos and Albuquerque, is that they plant these things in the medians of the road, when I've spent most of my life dealing with toxic cattle and toxic effects on livestock. Well, I leaked my used oil all over the place. You can see this is a lot larger plant. And we try to part of that this also sands your soil. But as you start handling this, at least it affects me that way. I have some allergies. It starts affecting how good I can breathe. You know. And there's about 3 plants in that one. And again, you can see the dead top growth up here. But you can see this was not grazed off. You can see the flower stalks where we were just at. The tops had been eaten off a little bit. And they'll take all parts of this plant and they grind it up and try to isolate what chemicals are in there. Right now we just generally call the toxic chemical tramadol, which is actually a form of alcohol that causes the trembling, or trematol, causes the trembling of the muscles. And that's what kills the animal, is the muscles will start trembling and the heart muscle will tremble as well. And when the heart muscle is trembling, it can't pump blood, and so the animal dies. And as long as you keep the animal calm and don't get them, they won't go into the bloodstream too fast, and you're alright. So when we have an animal that's sick, we tell people don't move them, don't try to push them, take food and water to them, let them slowly work their way into a corral where you can feed and water them. The only cure we have right now is good clean alfalfa hay and water for 6 to 8 weeks, and if they live that long, they're going to survive and get it out of their system. And part of what the Toxic Plant Lab is working on is trying to find out if there's something that we can do to offset that tramadol in the bloodstream. And so they'll grind up some of this plant and it'll be fed to rats, and they'll monitor how it affects them and what happens there. So this a lot bigger sack than the last one. And that's for our sampling for today. I'm just going to take these back, put them in cardboard boxes, and have them shipped to Logan, Utah, to the Agriculture Research Service Toxic Plant Lab up there. And those people have been really good. When we had some problems, they'll send people down here to talk to me or visit with me, and I just really appreciate them a lot. But while we're here, I thought I might point out this plant here. This is silverleaf nightshade. It's a kind of a strange plant as far as toxicity goes. Some years it's very toxic, other years it's not very toxic. But it produces a little red berry or yellow berry that has traditionally been used to curdle goat's milk to make cheese. And if you talk to the toxicologists, they'll tell you not to do that because it's extremely toxic. But it's been done for hundreds of years. So as you drive around, you see that's silverleaf nightshade. It's a pretty plant, but don't reach down to pick it up because it's full of spines. All right, with that, we'll see you at our next month. We will be doing another activity, either soil sampling or looking at pecans, and we hope to see you there.